this wealth down here, and that's why you've come. You've come to seek us out. We good? Okay. Oh. Well, greetings, everybody online. Yeah, there you go. Jerry's got it. If you're here, we don't have those problems. They could hear me the whole time. So anyway, he says, and then in verse 13, but they replied, your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man, who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more. To which I'm sure Joseph's going, yeah, that's what you think. They've written him off. They figure by this point, they didn't kill him. They know they didn't kill him. They sold him into slavery, but by this point, he's gone. He's either dead or been traded off or whatever, but they're thinking, Joseph's out of the picture. So one is no more. Joseph's gone. But we're still, we're all brothers. We're the son of one man. The youngest is back with him. Here we are. So for their credit, at least they told the truth. At least they started out in that respect. And it says, Joseph said to them, it is just as I told you, you are spies. And this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. And so he puts them in a very difficult position. Jacob's already been very clear that Benjamin's not heading to Egypt. I can't take it. He's got to stay here with me. And Joseph, I'm sure, knows this. That's why Benjamin's not with him. So he says, here's what the deal is. You guys are going to send somebody back to get him, and if you don't bring him down here, you're all staying in prison. You're my prisoners. And so he's kind of turned the tables on them a little bit here. They have to make a decision. How are they going to figure out a way to bring their brother down here to get them out of prison, but not kill their dad in the process? Not break his heart in the process. And so Joseph knows that he has put them in a predicament. And so what does he do here? It says, if you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. If you're not who you say you are, you're truly spies. And he put them all in custody for 3 days. So he said, I'm going to lock y'all up together. You decide who's staying and who's going. And it also gave them a chance to sit around and think about maybe the things they've done in their life and why this has come around to them. And so, it says on the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die. This they proceeded to do. So he says, choose one of yourselves. You stay here. You're basically my ransom person here. You're the one who's going to be collateral. And the other ones are going to go back and get the younger brother. I'm going to send grain back with you because you came to buy grain. Your households are starving. You're going to take the things back that you need. But you've got to bring your younger brother or you don't get your other brother back. So we're going to play brother against brother here. We're going to see where loyalty lies. We're going to see how this works out. It says, they said to one another, surely we are being punished because of our brother. Now it's starting to ring true to him. Boy, this is coming back around because of what we did to Joseph. Now we're catching it. They saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us. Said, man, we should have paid attention to Joseph. We did a wrong thing. And that's really what Joseph, I think, was kind of looking for. Not to torture his brothers, even though brothers like to torture their brothers, and so there's probably a little bit of fun in this for him too. But it was to truly see if they were sorry for what they did. Have they changed? Did they have any mercy in their heart because they showed him none? They were cold. They were heartless. They didn't care. They didn't care about Joseph. They didn't care about their dad. And so that's probably as much of it as anything, is are you going to be as ruthless with Benjamin as you were with me? Are you going to not care about what other people feel or think? And now he knows that they're in here talking about, number one, who's going to have to stay there, but also the reason they're there. And they're saying it's because of the way we treated Joseph. And they're admitting that they were pretty ruthless when they dealt with him. And it says, Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen." There always has to be that one brother who said, "Told you so." And that's what Reuben's doing. I told you we shouldn't have done it. And it says, "Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then came back and spoke to them again. So Joseph was playing this up fully. When they came before him and bowed down before him to ask for grain, Joseph is not speaking to them in Hebrew. They don't know Egyptian. He's not speaking to them in Hebrew. He's not letting on that he knows how to do this. The whole time he uses an interpreter, and as far as they know, he's just a high-ranking Egyptian dude. So they're talking freely in front of him when they're there in jail, in his jail, and he can hear them, and he's knowing everything they're saying. But they think, oh, he has no clue. He's just as Egyptian. He doesn't know Hebrew, so they're talking freely. But Joseph's hearing everything that they're saying. And Joseph, actually it says he turned around and wept when he was listening to his brothers. I'm sure it was very difficult for him at this point not just to run down there and go, "Hey, it's me. Look, it all worked out good." But he waits. We'll get to that later. It says he had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. So he gave them the grain they bought, gave them provisions to go back and get their brother, and then took their silver and stuck it back in their grain sacks that they were supposed to have used to pay for the grain. But Joseph said, put it back in their bags. So just kind of bury it down in there. It says at the place when they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, and he saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other trembling and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, "The man who is Lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan.' Then the man who is Lord over the land said to us, 'This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for your starving households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land.'" So the first surprise they get is when the first brother opens his sack and there's the silver. And it says all their hearts sank. Why? Because now they've got a brother who's stuck in prison in Egypt, and they've just ripped off Pharaoh. And they're like, this is not good, because we got this one guy here, and they probably gave him a bad time saying, "Didn't you give him your money? That's why you brought this. You brought this silver to get grain, and here you take your silver back with you? Are you kidding me? We could be killed for this." And they, I'm sure, treated him pretty harshly, but they all were fearing for this, because they're like, great, now what are we supposed to do? Number one, we got to go back and get grain. Number two, we got to take Benjamin back with us, and now we're criminals before Pharaoh. If they figure out the problem before we get back, they're going to be waiting for us, and essentially they're going to be warrants out for our arrest when we arrive back in Egypt. When we come back in there, they're going to grab Benjamin too, and then what are we going to do? Because, he's not even part of this, but this is going to kill Dad. So what are we supposed to do? So they told him, this is what happened. And Simeon's back there in jail, and now we got this silver, and he told us to bring stuff back, but there's one more thing. Now we got to take Benjamin back with us. And it says, as they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. And so now all the guys who probably hassled the first brother went, oh, wait a minute, I know I paid, but didn't you pay? Oh, wait. So they all realized, wait a minute, something's going on here. Why do we have our silver back in our sacks? And so now they all think they're criminals. They all think there's been a problem, but that doesn't mean that they're going to understand when they get back to Egypt. All they know is we shouldn't have our silver, and we have the grain and the silver, and that's not good. And it says, when they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. So Dad wrote him off. He said, woo, sorry to be Simeon, but he ain't coming back because I ain't sending Benjamin. You've already taken 2 of my sons. So, sorry, he stays because you ain't going back with him. It says, and now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me. Then Reuben said to his father, you may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back. Which I've always thought this was a really interesting thing. Now, I understand the principle of a life for a life, and Reuben is saying, take my 2 sons, but really that's not much of a bargain for Jacob because he says, if I don't bring your son back, you can kill 2 of your grandsons. Well, that doesn't seem like much of a bargain, but he's like trying to prove to his dad, I will stake my children's life on the fact that I will bring your son back to you. I will not let anything happen to him. And then it goes on and it says, but Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. He said, I can't take it. So I'm not losing Benjamin too. And so, really sorry to hear about Simeon, but Joseph's gone, Simeon's gone. No, you're not taking Benjamin. And it says, now with the famine was still severe in the land, so when they had eaten all the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. So he wasn't going to budge on Simeon, let him sit in jail. But when they ran out of food again, they have a different situation. He says, now we're going to die. We're going to starve here. So, boys, you got to go back and buy some more food. Well, now his sons are in a difficult spot because they don't dare go back to Egypt. Number one, they think they're criminals, or at least in the eyes of the Egyptians, they think they're criminals. And number two, if they walk back and stand before Joseph without Benjamin, they're all either going to jail or they're going to die. And so here Dad's saying, go get more food. And they're like, it doesn't work that way. So it says, but Judah said to him, the man warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. We can't buy. We can't even go before this man unless we have Benjamin. And he's the one who determines if anybody gets food. So we can't even go to a different town. We cannot buy there unless Benjamin is with us. He won't even talk to us. So it says, if you will send your brother along with us, we will go down. Send our brother along with us. We will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. Because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Israel asked, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? He said, you did this because you should have never told him you had a younger brother. Not knowing, of course, that it's Joseph who knows they have a younger brother. But he's like, you did this. If you'd have kept your mouth shut, we'd have been fine. And it says they replied, the man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. This is, as your father still living, he asked us, do you have another brother? We simply answered his questions. How were we to know that he would say, bring your brother down here? Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once. so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. He says, all I can do is tell you I will guard him with my life. And if something happens to him, all the shame goes on me. It says, as it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. So that just gives you a little glimpse, a little snapshot of how long Simeon's been sitting there waiting. Long enough for them to have come and gone twice, and long enough for them to use all the supplies they had bought. And they said, we could have already had this over. Just let us go and get this over with him. It says, then their father Israel said to them, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bag and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm, a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the man took the gifts and double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, take these men to my household, slaughter an animal, prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon. The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, we were brought here because of the silver that was put back in our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. Well, the funny thing about this is they're thinking the reason they're being asked to Joseph's house is because he's going to get us there so he can basically overpower us, take our stuff, and then throw us in prison, make us slaves of his. The irony of that is Joseph really had the power to do that at any time. 9 guys are not going to stop, or 10 even with Benjamin, are not going to stop what Joseph had behind him in power. He could have at any time just said, take them, and they'd have been gone. But they're thinking he's luring us in for something, and it's a trap, and we're going to get stuck here. Where really, in reality, Joseph, again, is doing something for them to kind of test them, to see their loyalty not only to each other, but to Benjamin and to their father. And he wants to bring them into a place where he can kind of observe them and spend time with them away from the rest of the Egyptians. He's not revealing himself yet, but he's wanting to bring them in. So it says, so they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. We beg your pardon, my lord, they said. We came down here the first time to buy food. But at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found his silver, the exact weight in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks. It's all right, he said. Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. Then he brought Simeon out to them. So now they're really confused. He's like, no, I have the records here. This is how much you guys bought. This is how much you took with you, and it's paid in full. I've got your silver. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. No, we found the exact amount of silver back in our sacks. No, you're paid in full. You need to go because you owe us nothing more. God must have put it there. God gave you a little gift. Accept it as that. It says, then the steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard that they were to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts that they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. Again. He asked them how they were, And then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well." And they bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" Now, he would not have recognized Benjamin, most likely, because Benjamin was little, way little, just a wee child, and so if really even born, and so he wouldn't have understood exactly what he looked like, and so that's not, he's not one that is recognized. Now, through process of elimination, the 10th guy that came with him is the brother, but this is the first time he's laid eyes on him for years, and he was young when he left, and Benjamin was younger than that. So he comes and he's ready to welcome this brother of his, and so he says, is this the one? Is this the younger brother you told me about? And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brothers, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to the Egyptians. So Joseph plays it up fully. Yes, you're coming into my house for a banquet. That's your guys' table over there. Go sit over there. Joseph, being of status in Egypt, didn't even really eat with the lower Egyptians, let alone Hebrews. And so they served him by himself as the owner of the household, the head of the household. So he had his place, they had their place, and the other Egyptians sat over here because they're not going to eat with the Hebrew dogs. We're not eating with them. We're going to sit over here. So Joseph did everything according to protocol. So the brothers really suspected nothing. It says the men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest. And they looked at each other in astonishment. When the table's been set, and here's all their names, and it's in the proper order, that's pretty crazy. We never told him who was oldest or youngest. We never even told him all our names, probably. And here he's laid a table before us from oldest to youngest, and he seated us this way. It says when their portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Look at the little kid. Look at all the roast beef he got. I mean, he gets this huge portion, and everybody else is going, wait a minute. They're probably a little bit in the back of their mind going, this reminds me of a colorful robe. Why does this guy get all the good stuff? And it says, now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sack with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. So not only is he going to get the silver back again, but they tried to return the first set, and they said, no, that's yours, keep it. So they bought more grain, and he put that silver back in their sacks with their grain. But then he took his personal cup with his signet on it, his deal, and stuck it into Benjamin's sack. Probably stuck it a little bit deeper in there. Got it down in there good. It says, as morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, go after those men at once. And when you catch up with them, say to them, why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done. When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back for you from the land of Canaan the silver that we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die. You just got to love it when in the Bible or any story when somebody makes a real rash statement like that. If you can find that silver cup, the guy who's got it should die. Yeah. because none of us took it. And it said, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. Very well then, he said, let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. I'll change it a little bit. I don't want all you, but if one of you's got my cup, you're my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Here we go again. We got to go back and say, well, Dad, we lost Benjamin. He's gone. To which they know that's going to be it for Dad. He's not going to handle this well at all. But they were so sure. There's no way you're going to find anything. But Joseph set this up so well that he knew they would be caught. At this, they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Now, did they all have to return to the city? No. Because he said, the rest of you are free from blame. You can go. Take your stuff you bought, head on down the road. But nobody's going back to tell Dad. They're like, oh no, we're going with you. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination? What can we say to my Lord? Judah replied, what can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup. But Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace. I don't want the rest of you around. You go back to Canaan. Take your grain, take your silver, get out of here. I'm just keeping the young one. Then Judah went up to him and said, pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants, do you have a father or brother? And we answered, we have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me so I can see him for myself. And we said to my lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, unless the youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what the Lord had said, what my Lord had said. Then our father said, go back and buy a little more food. But we said, we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces. And I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now if the boy is not with us when we go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph. And we're going to pause to see. Then when he made himself known to his brothers, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But so Judah has this long plea, and he retells the story in 44. That's why I just read straight through it. It's all information we've already talked about. But he comes back and he says, I cannot go back before my father and see the misery on his face when I tell him Benjamin is not coming. And you know that the brothers and Judah himself is standing there going, I've seen this once before. I cannot do it again. I have already broke my father's heart once. And that was for a lie, and that was for my brother Joseph. I will not do this again. So he said, put me in slavery. Send the boy back. Let my father have his peace in his old age. I will be your servant. And I'm sure that the other brothers are thinking the same thing. I am not going to be the one to go back and do that to dad again. I can't do it. And Joseph sees this compassion in the heart of the ruthless people who sold him into slavery without giving it a second thought. You see, they didn't think about dad the first time around. All they knew is, I want to get rid of this young kid. He was the favorite. He was spoiled. He was special. I want him out of here. And so when he begged for his life before them, they said, too bad, you're gone. And they went back and told dad, he's been torn apart by a wild beast, he's dead. And I think they saw what that did to Jacob at that time, to Israel. And over the years, this is something that they had thought about. And when Judah came and said, I can't do it. I can't go back and do it again. Take me instead. Let me be your slave. I think it really touched Joseph. I think he saw the heart that he wanted to see. I think he saw that bit of repentance of them saying, I will not do that to my dad. I will not do that. Joseph even set him up. He took the young one that he knew was dad's favorite, and they knew was dad's favorite, and he gave him 5 times as much of everything, so that they could set that scenario back up again where they go, oh, look, dad's favorite's getting everything again. And he gave them an opportunity to get rid of Benjamin. Just like he did me. I'm fattening him up. I'm giving him the coat. I'm treating him special. I'm ignoring you guys and giving him the attention. I'm giving him 5 times the amount that you're getting. Here's the favorite. Look, here's dad's favorite again. And now I'm going to give you a golden opportunity to get rid of him. All you got to do is say, you know what? Let's leave him here as a slave in Egypt. It's even easier than selling him to traders. And you can go back to dad and say, oh, that big mean guy in Egypt took him from us. So go. Go back. Leave the favorite here. And instead they said, no, keep us instead. You've got to send him back to dad. You've got to let him go back. And then it says, and we're in 45 now, it says, and he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Oh, this is bad. This is the guy we threw in the pit and sold into slavery? Can our life get any worse? Here we thought we were going to have to go back and tell dad that Benjamin wasn't coming back, but now we got to face angry brother here who's in a position to just, with a word or a snap of his fingers, have us put to death, and now we're standing before him. That's a bad scenario for them. If Joseph has one little ounce of grudge against them, at the very least they could be put in prison, made slaves, or like I said, put to death. Joseph has no restraint in that area. I mean, he can do whatever he wants. And so when he says, guess what? I'm Joseph. They went, oh, are you kidding me? They weren't relieved. They were terrified. It says, when Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. See, Joseph, through all this stuff, has recognized God's hand upon his life. He remained faithful in every position he was in, whether it was Potiphar's house, whether it was in the jail, or whether it was serving Pharaoh. He was faithful to God in all those things, and he was faithful in what he was called to do. And so he said, now I can look back on it and see. 20 years ago, I wasn't so happy with y'all. But what you guys did was really not your deal. It was God's preparing me for this moment so that I can save all these people. Save the world. And this is that what you thought you were doing, when you thought you were doing evil, God was really preparing me to save all these people. And so Joseph didn't hold any grudges or anything because he saw what God was doing. And that is a mark that even a lot of us, I think, sometimes have problems seeing, is when somebody has wronged us or done something to us, even when our life carries on and we can see the good that has maybe come from that, we still want to hold a grudge against that person. But that thing they did also helped to make us who we are now. And we have the choice of either taking that and learning from it and building from it, or stewing on it and letting it destroy us. And he says, I know what you did to me, but God used it for something great. That horrible thing he went through made him the man that he is now. If he would have never been sold into slavery, he would have never been sitting before Pharaoh. So he said, God did it. It says, for 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord over all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children, and your grandchildren, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there because 5 years of famine are still to come. He says, you need to get out of Canaan because this ain't getting any better. And I can provide for you if you come down here. So stop making that trek back and forth. Come down here. I've got a place down here in Goshen, which is actually the upper part of Egypt when you think about it north to south, but it's the lower part of Egypt when you think about it elevation. The Nile River runs from the south to the north, which is a little bit different from everything that we think in our minds. We always think of rivers running from the north to the south. But the Nile River actually runs out of like Ethiopia area, and it runs from the south to the north. And so the delta of this, where it all spreads out at the last, and you have this green land down there, is at the north side of Egypt up by the Mediterranean Sea. It's all fresh water that comes down to that and waters that whole area. And he says, that's where I'm going to put you. I'm going to put you there because you have flocks, you have herds, and you can care for them there. And you can take care of them. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have you take care of a bunch of that stuff, because here's the weird kind of irony thing. Egyptians didn't like shepherds, and they hated taking care of flocks and herds. They were not shepherds. But they needed the things that shepherds did. They needed the wool, they needed the meat, they needed whatever. And so God provided a place for them to go and be the shepherds, basically, of that whole nation. He says, you can have this green pasture land, none of the Egyptians want it. This is like the best area. And you can bring your flocks and your herds, and you will prosper here, and you will grow here. And it says, otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt and about everything that you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." You are also directed to tell them, "Do this. Take some carts from Egypt for your children, your wives, and get your father and come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours." He said, "Don't worry about packing up all your stuff. I got better stuff waiting for you. Just grab the stuff you need, grab your family, and get back down here. We'll take care of you once you arrive." So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way." So they went up and out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive, and I will go and see him before I die." Nice happy ending, right? But it is really amazing to think about the fact that this was carried out because of Joseph's faithfulness. And not only his faithfulness to God as he went through the different sections of his life and different places of his life, but also through his heart being softened by God and receiving his brothers and not wishing vengeance on them. But instead, he saw how God had moved and saw that no matter what they did to him, no matter how they had wronged him, no matter how wrong they were in all these situations, the thing that was important was God was able to do the things he did because of what they did to Joseph. And he said, "You know what? That little thing, it doesn't matter anymore. Now I can see where God was going with it." And the reason that God was able to move him there is because his heart was not hardened along the way, and it was not bitter along the way, but instead he accepted his circumstances and stayed faithful to God and went where God called him to go, even through the heartaches. And God used that and turned it around for something incredible. And so that is the story of Joseph and his brothers coming to Egypt, and the way that God used that and the blessing that came from that. Any questions or comments? Yes, God directed them there. They would have been there. But also most likely the storehouses that would have been at the other places would have been for the people in those areas. They would have been more regional. And Joseph would have been in charge of the central storehouses where foreigners could come and buy grain. Because you probably just didn't let anybody go into any city and get what they wanted, because then the cities would start to run out of food. And so he had it divided out where regions had storehouses for the people of those regions, and then most likely some kind of a central clearinghouse kind of thing for foreigners to come in, because all the people of Egypt were taken care of first. And then they had the storehouses for the foreigners. If the people of Egypt would have started running low, then the foreigners don't get food. They had it all worked out to where they were going to be taken care of, and each city was going to be taken care of. So probably if you had people that were coming in from out of the country, they told them, "You need to go down and see this guy, because he's keeping tabs on the main warehouse where everybody can get food." And then the other storehouses were more for the cities and the regions, the farms around them, the people that put into it. Last week I made a mistake, and Robbie was telling me, talking about it later, but it was I said 5%, but it was 1/5. So it's 20% is what each family put in. Because I mistakenly quoted and I said 5, but it's 1/5, which would be 20%. So that's the tax that was. And we were commenting on the fact that 20%, yeah, I'll pay that. Let's do that. Yeah, so they had a lot of stored up in those different areas, but it was from the people in those areas, and then they had a more of a central location that would have taken the excess and stuff like that, and that's what they would have sold out to other nations or other people. So that's probably why they had to encounter Joseph, because he'd have had his thumb on that pretty good. Yes. Yes and no. It depends on how you want to read hieroglyphics and look at it. There are records of famines, but they say they don't line up with the time of Joseph. So it depends on how you do the dating of Egyptian history. So yes, there are records of them having great famines and even this great famine, but they say, well, that's not when Joseph lived, so it doesn't match up. But if you kind of move the timelines together, which that Exodus, what was it, the Patterns of Evidence, Exodus, does that. It lines the things up. And then, yes, there are documents that talk about this famine and the time of Joseph, but if you keep the timeline separated, then no, there's not, according to secular historians. The gods, yeah, I know. That's exactly what you think of, because when Jacob was questioned, he's like, well, if you find that God here, that person should be put to death. And then Rachel's got it, and that's the one he loved. And now here you've got Benjamin. They're going, well, if you find it, put that person to death. And it's like, yeah, be careful. Only Rachel knew, Benjamin didn't. Any others? If not, we're going to kill the camera. Bye, people at home.